Hi, I'm Glyn Dewis, and in this video I'm going to take you through the kit that I use to take the portraits that I do, plus how I use it, why I use it, and how having complete confidence in the kit that you use to do what you need it to do when you need it to do it can completely transform your photography. Okay, so to kick things off, a huge thank you to both Sony and Wex for asking me to create this video, which is a great opportunity to answer some of the questions that I get from time to time, plus give you a bit of an insight into how I use the kit depending on who I'm photographing. So let's kick off with what I have in my bag on a typical portrait shoot. All right, so to kick things off then, in the outer panel of my bag, I generally keep just odds and sods. There's a stand for a GoPro, some miscellaneous bits of kit. And in here, I carry just a load of spare batteries. Batteries for the camera, for the video monitor, and also for my tethering, which I'll show you in a short while. But inside the main bag, I've got just a few little odds and sods here, like microphones, GoPro. I think there's another little bag here that contains another little microphone. And then we have a DJI Osmo Pocket for doing some behind the scenes footage. This is a video monitor and some filters. We've also got a tether cable for when I'm shooting tethered to the laptop. And in here again, some other filters, different varying filters there for when I'm actually doing some video. And of course, a grey card, an essential piece of kit. And in here we have some triggers. This is for triggering speed lights if I'm using a speed light. This is my Westcott trigger for triggering the main light that I'll show you in a short while. And this is my Tether Tools Air Direct for shooting wirelessly tethered. Backup camera, Sony a7R II. Put that to one side just there. Here's my main shooting camera, the Sony a7R IV, which I absolutely love. And then my two go-to portrait lenses. This is the 85mm G Master. Razor sharp, and then the other one which I like for seated or standing portraits is the Zeiss, the 55mm lens. And then there's just some other odds and sods. Here's some more batteries and a cable, and what have we got in here? We've got memory cards as well. So that's pretty much it. Oh, and just one more thing. We've got some AA batteries and a multi-tool. You can never go anywhere without having a multi-tool. All right, so as you saw in the video then, this is my main working camera. This is the Sony a7R IV. I absolutely love it, and it's a real beast. I was using the Sony a7R II for a good while before this one, and I've fairly recently upgraded, and it is a noticeable difference. The detail I'm able to capture with this, especially when it's kind of connected up with the 85mm G Master, is off the scale. It is unbelievably detailed. You'll see in a short while when I'm taking these really close-in portraits, the detail that you can capture in the eye is just incredible, and the individual eyelashes. That's the combination 85 G Master and this one here. 61 megapixels, like I say, 15 stops of dynamic range, and loads of other stuff it can do. The menu, I find the menu really easy to navigate. It kind of takes a little bit initially, I guess, because I used to shoot Canon. And it's a very different menu system, but once you get into it, it's just like any other system. And plus, you can also kind of put your little preferences in there that you can go to straight away, much as what I've done in this. But yeah, absolutely love this camera. This is more than a camera now. This is my assistant, and you'll see why I say that in a short while when I kind of go through how I actually do the photo shoots. All right, so before we dive into looking at just some of behind the scenes on portraits that I take, and the way that I use the kit to get the very best out of them, I just want to cover just some of the things that you would have seen me pulling out the bag as well. And one of those is the L bracket. And you can see here's my Sony a7R IV, and you can just about see this piece of kit that goes down one side and underneath. And you can see the Arca Swiss plate there for attaching to the tripod. Now, the great thing about this L bracket is, and I've used these for quite some time, is that when you have your camera set up on the tripod, let's say you have it in landscape orientation with the lens at a certain height, if you then want to change the orientation of your camera, ordinarily what you would have to do is loosen maybe the ball head angle the camera over, and then adjust the height of the tripod to get the lens back to the normal height again. With an L bracket, you don't need to do that because it can attach to the tripod underneath and on the side. And the way they're made is that when you take the camera from landscape, you literally pull it out of the actual ball head, rotate the camera, drop it back down and tighten it up. And the way they're made means that the actual lens is at the same height. So they're really, really convenient. Another good thing about the one that I'm using is it's also got this little attachment on the side here, like an additional cold shoe or hot shoe attachment there. So when I have, where is it now? Here's my trigger for my lights. That goes into the hot shoe, but I also use this wireless trigger here for my for tethering rather. It's called the Air Direct from Tether Tools. That also fits onto your camera using like the cold shoe. But when the trigger's in there, I can simply drop it onto this side of the L bracket here. So I can very easily have both the trigger and the Air Direct on the camera at the same time. So that's great. Now, the other things I use as well, I've talked about Westcott. I use their lights, the FJ400, which is a battery-powered kind of studio light that you can use indoors and outdoors. You can also plug it into the mains, and that just does what it says on the tin. It can shoot in manual, in TTL, high-speed sync. And I also use the Westcott light modifiers, the large Octo, the rapid box switch, which opens and closes really, really quick. So it's really super convenient. And then the background that you'll see I've used a lot of times in this portrait series is veterans portraits. So there's kind of like a uniformity across the whole project. That's called the X-Drop. Now the grey background is actually called the Vintage Grey Canvas by Glyn Dewis. There you go. Right, okay, let's now dive into just showing you how I use some of the kit to help me to get the best results. And I kind of use the camera as an assistant, and that's a huge help. All right, so now then, let's take a look at a little bit behind the scenes of a typical portrait shoot. Now that we know what kit I'm using, let's look at how I use it. All right, so on screen you can see a typical example of a setup, really, really small footprint that I need to take up. And the reason for that is because I'm pretty much most of the times photographing veterans, if it's a veteran we're talking about here, at their home where space can be limited. So I need to have a small footprint. So you can see here I've got my simple collapsible background. I've got the subject in front of it. I've got one light which I'm using to the side and forward, which gives the exact kind of lighting pattern that I want, which is basically like a Rembrandt lighting, where the side of the face nearest the light is lit, the other side's in shadow, but because of the height and the angle of that light, it's then going to catch just a little bit of the cheek on the shadow side, which is going to give us Rembrandt lighting. And generally when I'm photographing, because I'm in a consistently lit environment, I am shooting in TTL through the lens, allowing the camera, all that clever stuff inside the camera, to sort of take the picture that I want, also communicate with the flash to give me exactly the kind of output that I want from that flash as well. And if it's too much or not enough, very, very easy just to go up and down the power from the camera position to affect what exposure I get from that flash. Real, real cool stuff. But when it comes to actually taking their pictures, you can see here then, like I said, the lights to the side and to the front, but my camera is firmly planted on a tripod in front of them. Now, a lot of times I get asked, why are you using a tripod if you're using flash? Because we know that as photographers, if we're using flash, it freezes motion. So why use a tripod? Well, my answer to that is that it's got absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I'm using flash or not, but it's got everything to do with how I've learned over the last couple of years to help the subjects to relax. Now, long story short, that basically means that I spend more time talking to the subject than I do actually taking the picture. I'd say 80% plus more of my time as a photographer, a portrait photographer, is spent talking, and just a small proportion is spent taking the photograph. And the reason for that is it's kind of helping them to relax. It's building a rapport. You're going to get a better picture. You're going to get a better expression and feeling out of somebody if they are comfortable with you and they feel relaxed. And you're not going to get that unless you spend time talking. Now, one thing I've also learned over the last couple of years is not just the value of the talking, but also the value of maintaining the eye contact. And what I mean by that is, once we then start taking the picture, what I don't do is then put my face behind the camera to be checking things like sharpness, focus point, composition, and what have you. Of course, that's important, but what I tend to do is this. I put the camera on the tripod and I put the focus point over their face. And I can see the composition. I'm still talking. But when it comes to actually taking the pictures, I've just got my finger resting on that shutter button. But my head is above the camera. So I can maintain that eye contact and keep the conversation going. Because if I go behind the camera, what I've discovered is that the subjects start to feel a little bit anxious. It kind of undoes all that stuff that we did before. Maintaining that eye contact keeps their mind off the fact, strange as it seems, of being photographed. Now, I can only do this because I am 100% confident that my camera is doing what I need it to do, which is track that actual subject if they move just a little bit. I want it to track and focus on the correct part of them so that they're going to be nice and sharp. My camera, I know now, will lock onto their face, and wherever they move, the tracking will keep with them. And that is just wonderful. It'll also get a pinpoint onto their eye. It'll focus onto their eye, which is vitally important for a portrait, as we know. So think of it this way now. My camera is kind of becoming not just my camera, but also my assistant. Because while I'm above the camera talking to people, the camera is keeping an eye on what's in focus and what's going to be sharp and all this kind of stuff. So that I can now just keep pressing that shutter button as and when, and know 100% confidently it's going to nail it. That has made a huge, huge difference to my photography. I've really learned that being a portrait photographer, for me to get the best results, means that I need to be more of a talker than a person who clicks down on that shutter button. And I can only do that when I know the camera is doing what I need it to do. Massive, massive difference. All right, so talking of the face tracking and in particular the eye focusing, check this out. All I've done now is I'm going to grab my camera and kind of point it around my office where I've just strategically placed just a couple of portraits. But even just using portraits that I've actually already taken, the camera can lock on. So check this out. So I'm just moving the camera around. There's a portrait I've got on the floor. If I just bring that down there, and straight away, look, the camera sees straight away, oh, there's a face. So it dives onto it. If I half press the actual shutter button, it then locks onto the eye, which is just incredible. So you can see, move it elsewhere, you get nothing, there's no kind of focusing. Maybe even this one on the wall here, straight away, it's going, oh, there's a face. Let's just move in just a little bit closer on it now, press it down again, and it finds the eye. That is just so useful when, especially with the kind of shooting that I'm doing, where I'm wanting to maintain eye contact above the camera. By me resting my finger on that shutter button, I know the camera is tracking the face, which is brilliant no matter where they move. Some people move more than others. But the minute I start to think, now's a good time to take a picture, I just half press that shutter button. Straight away the camera goes, there's an eye. It goes green. I know it's locked on. Take the picture. Happy. We're good to go. Job done. Pin sharp picture, especially with that 85mm lens. Now, I've already mentioned about how important it is that we spend more time talking than actually taking pictures. And that's because obviously it helps the subject to relax. But another unseen benefit of it, which I just did not see this coming, was the fact that when you do spend time talking to people, it enables you to kind of get a feel for them and whether or not you need to approach the photo shoot in a slightly different way. Now, a perfect example of that is this guy that we can see on screen now. This is a wonderful man, 99-year-old John Sleep, former parachute regiment who fought during World War II. Now, I spent a lot of time talking to John before the photo shoot, and by talking to him, you kind of realise that he's suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder. And long story short, I didn't know that if I came in with my usual setup of the flash in the Octa and that flash going off, I didn't know if that would have an adverse reaction on John.
A big hospital, and the same thing happened now. I was put into the main ward, and during the night they'd moved me out into a small room. Of course, I said, what the hell am I doing here? I said, well, you've been ordering people about and swearing all night.
Were you aware that you were doing that? You weren't?
Oh no, it still happens now. Yeah, the wife used to say to me, you've been in the army again.
So I decided, instead of using a flash, that I would use a video light, a daylight balanced, constant video light, which is great because once you've set it up, it really is a case of what you see is what you get. The light's on, you can see the lighting pattern, fantastic. However, in the camera, this is where that built-in technology can really, really help you out. Because like all the other times I do the portrait shoots, I then put the camera on the tripod, focus points on the face, and no matter where he's moving now, that's going to track him. But bearing in mind, I'm kind of wanting to approach this photo shoot just a little bit different. I need to be sensitive to his needs, so I'm not using the flash, but also so that he's unaware that I'm taking a photograph. I can then dive into the menu on the camera and turn on what's called silent shutter. Now, this is going to enable me to take a photograph without there being the click that you would expect to hear and without having the flash go off. So while John is kind of merrily chatting away, I can very casually take photographs, especially as I've also plugged in a cable release into the camera, so my hands are nowhere near that shutter button. They're just kind of relaxing on my lap as we're talking. The camera is now tracking him. When I half press down that shutter cable, the release, it locks onto his eye. I fully press it. I know I've got a razor sharp picture, but John's completely unaware of it. And that was needed in this particular case. It's not in every case, but with some people, when you have to approach them different, you have to adapt to their needs for you to get what you want out of this photo shoot. Having that technology enabling you to do that is wonderful. So anyway, just talking about that silent shutter, I want to get you to see, or rather hear, the difference. Now I've got the camera here. This is where the shutter is normal. So I'll just kind of aim it to somewhere in the room, take a picture, and I'll put it near the mic. And you can hear it. That's the shutter going off. It's not excessively noisy anyway. But if I now dive into the menu, and let's have a look here, we'll then turn on silent shutter. So we turn it on, and now take another picture. I'll have to keep making a noise so that you know that I'm not dubbing this out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Honestly, I promise you I took a picture then. I definitely took a picture. In fact, if I just put it this way around, so you can see the back of the camera. There you go. Took a picture, no noise. So the silent shutter is brilliant. I used to think that that was only for maybe wedding photographers, so that when they're in there taking the service, they don't want to disturb anything, so they can turn on that shutter so it's all very, very quiet. But really, this technology just comes into a world of its own when you kind of use it, not just in those environments, but when you use it for kind of working towards those people's needs and being, like I said, being sensitive. So incredibly useful bit of kit. Now, if you do get a chance, and I really hope you do, to check out the dedicated website for the project, and the address is just 3945portraits.com. What you'll see on there in the portfolio is that not every veteran has had a close-up headshot done. And that's because it's just gut instinct. Sometimes you just feel that it's not appropriate. You don't want to overstep that mark. Because obviously one thing you want to do is to make sure that when you leave a portrait shoot, you leave the subject with a good feeling. So it makes it much easier to go back the next time, and much easier for the next photographer who may want to photograph them next time. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just outstaying your welcome or making them feel uncomfortable. But when it comes to actually doing the close-up portraits, I've talked about it already that I use, obviously, the Sony a7R4 and the 85mm. The combination of those two together is just a match made in heaven when it comes to these close-up, shallow depth of field portraits. And I say shallow depth of field because, again, that's just something I've been asked about before, is that what you notice with these portraits is that the eyes are absolutely razor sharp. But then beyond the eye sockets, everything else is starting to go out of focus. So it's an incredibly shallow depth of field. I think I photographed them maybe at f1.8 or sometimes f2. Now that's very, very shallow. It's just a creative choice. Because having spent time talking to these veterans, the stories that they tell you, you can see them in the eyes. And it's the eyes that I want you to be drawn into as a viewer. So that's why I choose to do f1.8 or f2. Now, shooting that wide open can be quite challenging because there is hardly any room for error. You could try to focus on the eye, but inadvertently photograph or focus on an eyelash. That it could be that much of a difference. where the eyelash could be nice and sharp, but the eye could be out of focus. So what I have with this Sony here, what I'm able to use is something called focus peaking. And this has been brought over from the video world. It is incredibly useful. And, in its simplest form, the basic way you're using it is once I've got the camera in position on the tripod in portrait orientation, I then set the composure, set the composition up so that they're framed exactly how I want them to be. And then what I do is I put the camera into manual focus, because then what I can do is I can manually rotate the focus ring. And when I do that, the minute I do that, the actual back of the screen zooms in on my subject. So then I can kind of position it so that the eye is nice and big on the back of the camera. And then as I rotate that focus ring, you start to see this kind of yellow flickering. And there can be other colors. You can dive into the menu to choose any other color from what they do have that you can then have flickering. But basically, wherever you see this kind of flickering appearing, is the camera telling you that those areas are razor sharp. So all I need to do while the camera is rock steady on a tripod is slowly rotate that focus ring until I see that yellow flickering appear on the subject's eye. And when it does, I just press that shutter, and I know at a really wide open aperture that I have completely and utterly nailed it. I mean, look at some of the examples here of how those eyes are sharp, but the rest of it drops out. I honestly don't think I could have done that without this kind of technology. So I'm loving now the marriage of photography and technology, on people skills and technology, that can allow you to take these kind of pictures much easier than maybe we would have been able to do before. And I say that as well because when it comes to this particular project, it is vitally important that I get what I get when I get it. Because if we're being honest, I may never have the opportunity to return to take that picture again. So I need to have total and utter confidence in my kit. I need to know that what I've got in my kit is going to allow me to do what I want to do, such as focusing on an eye at wide open aperture, so that I can get what I get. So this is why I'm incredibly happy with the kit that I'm using, because more than anything, it gives me the confidence to be able to do what I do. And more than ever, I am now so happy with the kit that I'm using, my workflow, everything now seems to be falling into place. And I'm convinced that is why my photography has improved over the last couple of years, because of technology and what it's allowing me to do, which is relax, gain confidence, and engage more with the subject. Now, something else that I wanted to just mention really was the fact that with this Sony camera being the mirrorless, it does kind of make things simpler. Well, I've certainly found that it makes things simpler for me. Now, that doesn't take away the fact that we're photographers. Simplifying it doesn't mean to say that we're making it easy. Far from it. The skill of the photographer is in the actual thought process and what it is that you want to put in front of the camera. But the actual technical side of it, it simplifies that. And what I mean by that is this perfect example is, let's say if I'm taking a portrait outside and I'm going to be using flash whereby I want to light the subject, but ensure that I have really moody, cloudy skies. Now, one of the things that's great about mirrorless is that when I look at the back of the camera, I can see in real time what my image is going to look like. So it really is a case of what you see is what you get. So as I'm first of all setting up the camera to give me the scene that I want, as I dial in those settings, I can see in real time what those clouds are going to be like. And then once I get the camera settings dialed in to give me the clouds that I want, all I then simply do is turn the flash on, take the picture in maybe TTL, and if I need to, just maybe make some adjustments to the power output afterwards. But the mirrorless side of things makes it really easy for me to dial in the scene, which is kind of what I use the camera for, and then just bring in the flash to light the subject. So there's many benefits, way more than just having a lighter camera to mirrorless. So I hope in some way that's been useful so that you can see how I go about taking the portraits that I do, what kit I use, how I use it, why I use it, and ultimately how it gives me, the technology inside all this stuff, gives me the confidence to be able to sort of hand over stuff to the camera to do while I engage with the person. And that's been like I said, that's been a massive, massive difference for me over the last couple of years to help improve my portraits. One thing I will add is that I have paid for every single piece of my kit. Okay, nothing's been given to me so that I can then come here and, I don't know, maybe say good things about it just because it was given to me. That's not the case. I'm very much a believer in using what is fit for purpose. And I started out as a Nikon shooter. I moved away. There were certain reasons why I moved away. One of them was to do with the tethering. So I moved into Canon. And I loved my Canon. I absolutely loved it. It did what it needed to do for me at the time. But as I've grown as a photographer, as my retouching has changed, I found that the files I was getting from that Canon, which was a 5D Mark III, were breaking down in the shadow areas just a little bit. And that's just because of the way that I, edit my pictures. I then moved over to Sony. I found that the Sony files could take a hell of a beating and still not break down. So that kind of sold me on it. However, having been with Sony now for a number of years, the benefits of moving over for me are far more than just being able to abuse a file. There are loads of other little things, as I've explained in this little video here, as to why I'm really happy with my photography. Let's face it, photography is it's about an art. It's not about being a geek and being technical. We as photographers, we need to have the vision. We need to be able to engage. We need to be able to see something that we can then capture to produce a beautiful picture. Just being a geek and knowing about all the technicals and all that kind of stuff doesn't make you a photographer. But having the confidence to be able to leave that technical stuff to the camera so that you can then concentrate on what you should be concentrating on, which is what's in front of the camera, that there produces fantastic photography. So I hope that's helped. The last couple of years has made a massive difference to me, so I'm really happy. You can probably tell that anyway. But thank you to Sony and to Wex for allowing me to record this video so that you folks can check out a little bit more about what I do. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you some other time.